Let's get spooky. This is our station Boo, where we explore the dark and mysterious corners of the world of horror, and we know that you are dying to listen.
Alrighty, and welcome to the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo, where we talk all things horror. Introducing our haunted host with the most, we have Lisa.
Hi, everybody. How are my spooky friends doing?
We have Karen.
What's up, my horrorholics?
And I am Shannon. Today we are graciously in the presence of two awesome guys. We have Mike Faber, who's been on here before, and the new Mark Maddox. Yay!
Much better than the old Mark Maddox.
I was going to say, the old Mark Maddox, he
This
stunk,
is the clone.
so this is
the
much
clone.
better.
Yeah. The old Mark Maddox literally had BO. This one doesn't.
Well, we are going to be diving in and talking about all sorts of different Draculas. Alrighty. So, Dracula, this iconic character in horror. What are our initial thoughts? Mark, why don't you go ahead and go first?
From the Hungarian portion of the planet, the thing with him being a prince and everything is more elaborated as the years go on. But I mean, for me, ground zero is still Bela Lugosi as Dracula, but there's a whole bunch of other guys that have done it great. I love Langella's version and Christopher Lee's version and Gary Oldman's version. There's a whole bunch of people that have done it that have put a spin on it. But if we're going to talk about pop culture, you can see a silhouette of Bela Lugosi as Dracula and not even see the teeth and go, yep, that's Dracula.
Yep. Mike, how about you?
Oh, for me, it depends what era of Dracula that you think of. And, for me growing up, it was always, Bela Lugosi. And then, being able to see him, play not just in the original Dracula, but also even in Abbott and Costello, and was just amazing. He ruled that movie. He was, the main obsession for that one, and he made Dracula really, really cool. And you have learning about history and both in cinema and in real life, and seeing that he was based off of a real person, so it was actually pretty cool. So it's pretty cool stuff.
It is pretty cool stuff. Lisa, how about you?
I've always liked Dracula. I remember when I saw the first one with Bela Lugosi when I was a kid. There's something about just Dracula that's like kind of romantic and horrifying all at the same time. I've always been fascinated with all the different stories, whether it be literature or whether it be, films, all the different films. Like Mark was saying, I like the Frank Langella Dracula. It's very kind of moody and everything. So, yeah, I think he's an important part of the whole vampire Dracula thing. And the fact that we have so many variations and so many different ways that we can play him, it just kind of makes it really cool.
Okay. And Karen, how about you?
Well, when I first heard the name Dracula, as a kid growing up, I didn't really much care for the character. I knew of the character. I've seen Bela Lugosi's version. I've seen Christopher Lee's version. And I guess my love for the character came when I did history. I did research on the history and the inspiration behind Dracula, which was he was inspired by one of the main historical figures he was inspired by was Vlad the Impaler. And I'm like, let me read some more about Vlad the Impaler. And I was like, okay, I can see why, Dracula is loved and inspired by this ruthless killer. Then I started rewatching some of the older films and the newer films, and I was like, you could put Dracula into almost anything and any horror really, and it'll be an iconic movie. because for some odd reason, Dracula tends to have that presence like a vampire should, and he'll just eat the movie if you get a good enough actor that knows how to do it.
Bingo.
Facts.
Completely.
Facts.
Because there's
Exactly.
been some really bad Draculas out there too.
Yeah, there
And-
have.
And folks, we might even get to a couple of them tonight. So
Yeah.
Dracula, I think actually my first interaction with Dracula, obviously outside of Sesame Street, because the Count was
Fun.
awesome.
Hey.
Cool.
Last one.
Outside of him, I would say is probably actually the beloved grandfather in the Munsters.
Well, Grandpa, of course.
Yeah, Grandpa.
Yeah.
He was probably my first like interaction with Dracula. So it was a very wholesome interaction, but it did evolve, and I fell in love with Bella, and I fell in love with Christopher Lee, and honestly, Gary Oldman, chef's kiss. Like it was just it's a whole evolution. Like once you dive in, you're sucked in, and it's an amazing thing. And Karen, I actually love the fact that you talked about Vlad the Impaler. I think that's actually a really great way to kind of talk about some of the beginnings of the story. Obviously, it's from Bram Stoker's Dracula, the novel, and there are hints and allusions to Vlad's story, which if you go and you actually talk to like people who are from that area, Vlad was actually considered a hero and not a villain.
Yeah.
Even though he was horrific in the way that he did things.
I mean,
It is some pretty weird stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
in one person's mind, he's a hero, and another person, he's a villain. It all depends on the context and who's he rooting for. If he's rooting for his people, you'll be like, yay, he saved us. We don't care what he did over there, but he saved us.
Yeah.
He's our hero.
Having a forest of impaled, bodies up into the thousands, not a big deal.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. That's just a Tuesday.
Yeah,
Unless you're the person who got impaled,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
well,
And-
you could that's his villains. Those are the people he was fighting against. So you're like, okay,
Yeah.
he's really scaring the heck out of them. But the time that he called everybody into his castle, inside the castle,
the poverty.
the poverty and crippled people and all that kind of stuff, and then closed the gates and then killed them all. I don't remember if he lit them on fire or something like that. You kind
He
of
lit him on fire.
yeah, that's
He lit 'em on
a
fire.
villain.
He lit him on fire.
That's a villain. That's a
Yeah.
villain.
That
Yeah.
is a villain.
Unfortunately.
Right?
I don't know.
So,
We've got to figure out what his motivation was. Maybe he had a good reason for it. I don't know.
well, I mean, if you think about it, you're in a war-torn country between two mega powers who are fighting over your territory, and you're being brought down by your weakest members, which happen to be the poor.
Mhm.
So
And
get rid of the
Yeah.
poor, you free up resources, and are able to give those resources to your guys who can actually fight.
Right.
Strategically, it makes sense. Humanity-wise,
not so much.
not a good move.
Not so much.
Not a good move.
No.
But so let's go ahead and talk about the qualities, though, that we do think make a good Dracula, outside of obviously Vlad's bloodlust. But when you think of Dracula, what are like characteristics that you're like, yes, he has to have these things in order for him to be a good Dracula? Mike, do you want to start us off first?
Sure. To make a good Dracula, he has to be mysterious. He has to be, I don't want to say he could be very, suave and debonair, and basically in some ways you don't suspect him of being a true monster because, he's the owner of the new mansion down the street that, had been abandoned for years. Or, a good Dracula also can become an animal like that. And it's just interesting. But you also, and sometimes have an understanding of him, of the character. It's like, oh, this is his motivation, or he's just pure evil, depending on who's playing him too. So it's interesting. Like when you had Bela Lugosi, you had Christopher Lee, or you had, even Gary Oldman. And, they played the different versions of Dracula. You saw him in all different lights.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Lisa?
Well, I know one thing is that he's got to be able to hide in plain sight and mesmerize people so they will bend to his will, makes promises, commanding. He's usually well dressed. I mean, he's got to have some kind of control over his bloodlust a little bit so he has more power. And I don't know. It's just something about him that he's just like, you love to hate him. You fall in love with him, and then you realize what a monster he is, and then you start going, oh, this is wrong. But you can't have that without his charisma.
It's interesting, though. Like you said, he has to control his bloodlust, but he also doesn't see humans as his equal. They're just to feed off of.
They're just a buffet platter.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, basically, very much.
Basically.
Mark, what about you?
For me, Dracula has to have personality. He can't just be an automaton of destruction. And I think, boy, am I going to catch hell for this? I think there's a lot of people that, and I know the actor would agree too. Christopher Lee wasn't that happy with playing Dracula that often because he was just an automaton of destruction. The first film is so good because the whole world was snickering when when the first week that this movie was running, and they weren't laughing when he kicks open the door of the library and it's got blood running down his face in Technicolor and is hissing, and he's it's like somebody threw a live hungry lion into the room, and it was amazing. But the other films, he started feeling it's like I'm just all the time just hissing, and I've got I want words, I want dialogue. And you look at Lugosi and he got dialogue. You look at Gary Oldman, he got a ton of dialogue. But none of them are the same. Lugosi's is weird, like almost like something out of a David Lynch movie, or a Stanley Kubrick with long pauses. He's just weird. Jesus, this guy is weird. And then you go to Gary Oldman, who is very historical with his interpretation and angry when Jonathan Harker makes fun of his past and everything, and falls in love. You look at Frank Langella's the romantic Dracula. You look at Louis Jourdan, the slick Dracula, almost wearing like a Beatles suit, something like, there's all these different people, but they all had personality. And that's the reason why I don't like something like the Demeter, Last Voyage of the Demeter, where it's just a monster on a ship. Dracula needs to come out and talk to us. We need to know him. But none of those guys played it the same. None of them. No. And yet they're all great.
Each one's individual. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's why it's so hard sometimes to pick your favorite Dracula, because they all had a different face that you really could enjoy. Karen, what about you?
Well, for me, for Dracula, he has to be able to command the room without really commanding the room. Like, he could walk in and that there's somebody there. Like, you could feel this aura, this presence, kind of like a predator. But when you look at him, you're like, is he really a monster, or he's just one of those type of personalities that has that monstrous aura to him? Dracula also has the intellect to where he could play off each other's emotions, to where, if I'm going to start a feud, I'm going to start a feud with some people between you guys, then I could go outmaneuver you guys to go do what I need to do. That comes from years of playing with White Wolf Vampire, because you have to have that intellect to be like, I'm gonna be 3 steps ahead of you. That's the Dracula I like, who's always 3-4 steps ahead of somebody. I also like, depending on the era you're going to do, or the context if you're going to do a Dracula. For me, I always like having a slick type of well put together, well groomed Dracula. I've heard some people or seen some where the Dracula's not kempt.
You mean like like he's all mussed up or something?
Yeah, like he's all like he just rolled out of bed and he's just going out there like that.
Oh, which one's that?
Well, I was reading one of my friends' books that they want to
Okay.
write,
Oh,
and I'm
okay.
like, I don't think that'd be well because it's Dracula. But everybody has their own interpretations of Dracula. Because he
Yeah.
wanted to make him like an everyday man, like just an everyday vamp. Even though he's Count Dracula, he's supposed to have all these powers. He's just so tired of the world and just want to be a vampire. So he's trying to live his life as a vampire. Doesn't tell anybody his real name. He gives him a fake name. But I think it would probably work. Maybe his story. I don't know. I have to give it some thought.
Okay.
I don't know if y'all like that concept.
I mean, like modern grunge Don Johnson Dracula? No.
Yeah.
No, not really.
It kind of
No.
sounds like Dracula going through
Dracula
a midlife
doesn't care.
crisis.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll let him know.
It's more like a fashion statement than a I mean, Dracula knows that his interpretation is he is above all of us. He might fall in love or want to have someone that he can claim as a mate, but the rest of the time it's food.
Yeah.
I'll let him know that. I'll let him. I'll let him listen to this episode so he get a good idea of Dracula.
So for me, a good Dracula has to be suave. There has to be that blend of charisma and elegance. This is an individual who's been around for a long time, who has riches. He knows high society. He holds that power. So there has to be that suave sophisticatedness to him. And the charisma has to be there.
Always.
Especially even when you're like reading, he doesn't always sound like the Gary Oldman in London version of Dracula. Sometimes he looks like the decrepit old man from the nursing home. And guess what? Nobody wants to do what the creepy old guy from the nursing home wants. But yet, people bow to his will. People want to do his bidding. And so there has to be that charisma. But I want there to also be that fire. I want there to be that split second change where like he goes from that to the monster who is ready to rip your throat out, because that is what he is. That suave, sophisticated elegance, charisma that you see is literally just the mask to the beast. And so I want to be able to see that the beast is there underneath everything.
One of the things that was in the original book at the time was the fear in England, in Britain, of the modern world, the more decadent world coming along, where this guy could be so much more than your boyfriend or your husband, that he could seduce your woman away from you no matter what. I mean, he was, and it was like a souped up version of you watching your mate slip away. And if you watch it with Bela Lugosi, you watch it with Frank Langella. Christopher Lee just would kill people, so that doesn't really count. Gary Oldman, these other ones where he would just come and not only did he he comes to the modern world and starts this decadent life, but no man can stop him just from his incredible charm and hypnotic power. And that was a pretty racy stuff at the time.
Oh yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Prince almost. Like he has that charm and that suave that brings that turn your woman away from you to look at him. That the singer Prince, the artist Prince, kind of like that.
Oh yeah.
That you look at him and you're like,
when you're saying all of that, I'm thinking of that meme where it's like this couple that's walking by and like this one chick is walking by and the guy's like checking her out and the girlfriend is like, "Excuse me."
I'm thinking of the time that was it Eddie Murphy or Eddie Murphy's brother or whatever said that Prince came in with his little booties, because he's not a very tall guy. He wasn't a very tall guy or anything like that.
Eddie Murphy's
just like
brother.
He normally is. Yeah. Eddie Murphy's brother, and kicked his rear end at basketball.
Yep.
Still dressed like Prince.
Dave Chappelle told that story,
and then
right?
just walked out. Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like Dracula.
I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it is.
he can wear your woman's clothes and steal her from you.
Facts. Facts.
True.
Was it Dracula? I
Very
think it was.
true.
I think
So
Prince was
now,
Dracula.
that we all know what we think are good qualities for a good Dracula, let's go ahead and dive into rating some of the famous Draculas, and we'll give some insight on the top 8. There was over 80 different people who played Dracula, so we're not going over all of them. We don't have time for that.
And I don't
But
think I've seen all 80. So
exactly. So we are going to do a top 8, and then we do have a few honorable mentions. But obviously, we need to start with the numero uno, Bela Lugosi, the man who kind of started it all for the majority of cinema. Who wants to go first on rating the lovely Mr. Bela Lugosi? Mark, you raise your hand. It's all on you now.
This is going to sound strange at first, but this is sort of the Star Wars Close Encounters thing. Star Wars and Close Encounters both came out the same year and created the science fiction boom. It took more than one film. Star Wars probably would have started the boom anyway, but the two films within 1 year started it. Dracula and Frankenstein in 1931 started the monster boom.
Yeah.
That movie is such a landmark film. People go, it's slow. Bull. It's weird. It's Stanley Kubrick weird. It's supposed to be where he stares at you a few more extra seconds, and Renfield's like looking around going, "Oh, brother, what the heck's wrong with this guy?"
It's supposed to be unnerving.
It's weird. It's just and it is such a beautiful film. I've probably seen it well over. It's not the most watched film I've ever seen, but I've probably seen it over 100 times. And
Easy.
I think it is early sound, so you have to give it that. You got to give it that break. You got to run it with the 1931 spectacles on. But I think it's a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite films.
Oh yeah, Bela Lugosi as Dracula. They still use so much of what happened in that film in modern film, anyways, from lighting to way they do makeup and costuming, the whole nine. So completely valid. So, Mark, how many skulls would you give out of 5 for Bela Lugosi as Dracula?
5.
5?
Oh yeah,
All
that's
right.
easy. That's easy. That's an iconic. That's like the Mona Lisa is to painting. It's like for Dracula, Bela Lugosi is that. That's the first thing people think of. It changed our culture a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, how about you? Your thoughts and rating on Bela Lugosi as Dracula?
Whenever you think of Dracula nowadays, it's Bela Lugosi's Dracula. That's, it's been driven into society so much. Everything you've seen based off of it, you don't think of, like the early silent film versions of vampires. When you think of Dracula, you think of the man coming down the staircase in basically the tuxedo and, with the eyes that were so piercing, and it was just amazing. And I basically, when you think about it, he is the template for everything that came after. And you literally, you can't get better than that. And, that is 5 skulls all the way.
Yeah. I can agree with that. Lisa, how about you?
Well, he was the first Dracula I ever saw, even before some of the silent films. Yeah, he's iconic. I mean, I agree, though, with Mark, though it is kind of a Lynchian Kubrick type of film, but I like those kind of films, so, I would have to say when I first saw it, I fell in love with the whole Dracula story, so I give it 5 skulls.
5 skulls for Bella. All right. Karen, how about you?
I mean, without if they never made Dracula, I don't think we'll have the Dracula we have now. Because he is the template. He is what people go to see what a Dracula should be and what they should look like, the mannerisms of a Dracula. So it's a 5.
5. I would give him a 5. He is iconic. His silhouette, his stare, his demeanor, everything. When you think of Dracula, that is what you think of. And with that being the case, and how every other Dracula after has paid homage to him in some fashion, you can't go wrong. It's, even though, yeah, he might not have even liked his performances all the time and didn't always like the stories, it was an iconic character. And it's something that, like I've said earlier, still today in filmmaking, it's something that's used as a reference. It's something that's used as a tool. We keep saying oh, it's very, Kubrick or, Lynch. No, these guys took it after him. These guys took it after him.
Point.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that was Todd Browning. So those guys are copying Todd Browning. So
yeah.
But yeah. I 100% agree with you guys. Bella is definitely a 5-star. Next, we'll have to give homage to the Monster King himself, Mr. Christopher Lee. Who wants to go first on this one? Karen?
Oh, I love Christopher Lee. His performances as Dracula tends to be a little bit like Mark said earlier. It was kind of more like a automaton in later works. I loved his acting in the first movie. I loved him in the first Dracula movie he played, but after that I was kind of like, what happened? Where's your lines? So you just okay. But for me, even though I love Christopher Lee as a whole, because he does some very great work, he really does have a good list. I would actually give him a 4.5 as my Dracula.
All right, Lisa.
Yeah, I, as much as I love Christopher Lee as Dracula, Dan's mustache though, he was kind of weird. And that was kind of weird when I first saw it. I'm like, wait, when did he have a mustache? But I think
Franco's Dracula.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Exactly. I would have to say that he was a little bit more brutal and not as charming. Mm-hmm. So I would agree with Mark, and I'd give him a 4.5. Much as I love him as an actor, and I've seen a lot of his stuff, it just his Dracula just didn't do for me what Bela Lugosi or any of the others did.
Okay, Mike, your turn.
For me, I guess I have to agree with everybody on this one. Christopher Lee brought a presence to the screen as Dracula, but he didn't have the suave and the charm that Lugosi had. The more he started playing Dracula, the less dialogue he had. He more was just a killing machine. He was, for blood and gore, he was amazing. Seeing the scenes with the blood dripping down and all through his mouth, and he just you just thought, and he just tore that person's throat out pretty much. And I loved watching the Hammer films and watching the versions of it, but I don't rank him up there as one of my favorites. I think he's great, but I don't think, I think if you want Dracula as a character, I don't look at Christopher Lee for that.
That's fair.
He's a presence.
I mean, that's fair.
He's a presence.
Totally.
Yeah, he's a presence, but he's not a character.
Mark?
I understand why they did what they did at the time, and what they did was very nervy. This was the 1950s, the late 1950s. And Christopher Lee, everybody was snickering apparently in theaters, thinking they were going to get blah, 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 blah. That's the way the Pink Panther cartoon Dracula, that's the noise he makes. But they were expecting it, and people were snickering. And like I said, when he came in, his first real scene of him being the killer vampire shut a lot of people up. It was a shocking moment, and it caught a lot of hell from the critics and everything like that. That first film is iconic in that way. It is a masterpiece of a film. If I could break it off from some of the other Dracula films, I'd give it a full 4.5. But with the whole thing, which Lee himself did not like, I don't know. I mean, for all of the whole overall thing, I'd have to give it like 3.5 or something like that, which I hate doing. First film, though, a solid 4. The other films, he just didn't get a chance to do anything else other than just be ferocious, So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's fair.
I understand, because I was just only thinking about the first movie, anyways.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie.
It is a great movie.
It's a Raiders of the Lost Ark of vampire films. Just moves.
Yeah, it does not let you down at all. You don't have time to breathe in that movie.
No, you don't.
True.
So for me, and I'm just going to go based off of his first film, I would give him a 4, because I do think he didn't have quite the presence that, to me, Dracula should have. And part of that is because they did have him more as the monster than the man. But I'm going to give it an extra 0.5, because his Dracula did for Hammer Films like Bela Lugosi's Dracula did for Universal. And it was part of the start of an era. It was something that was extremely influential in the horror genre in that time frame. So even though, it might not be the best Dracula out there, it was still influential, and it still did amazing things for the genre. So he gets that extra 0.5.
Good point.
Fair.
Good 0.5. I mean, good point. Yeah.
And since we've already talked about him a little bit, let's go ahead and rate Mr. Gary Oldman as Dracula. Lisa, why don't you start us off on that one?
Okay. I think Gary Oldman did a really darn good job. I mean, when I first saw that, that's one of my seasonal, I watch it at least twice a year. I love the way he played it. I love the way he acted around the special effects and everything. It was just good, because you kind of felt sorry for him, because he was so much in love, but you were still terrified of him too. Yeah. It was just, I have to give him a 5. I think he did for portraying Vlad Dracul and Dracula in general, and how we went into the history a little bit. And he had a presence. And you also, like I said, you also kind of felt sorry for him a little bit. The character, you were very invested in the character. So I give him a 5.
Okay. Mike, how about you?
I'm going to give, Gary Oldman's version of Dracula. I think I loved how they showed the different versions of him. I thought that was brilliant filmmaking right there. And Gary's one of those actors who, I'm saying Gary like I know him, type thing, I tell Gary, but he disappears into every role he does. And that's one thing I love about seeing him in so many different things. And his version of Dracula, like Lisa said, you actually felt sorry for him at times. And, like, hey, this man is cursed. There's, type thing. And he's definitely a 5 without any doubt. I'd be, shocked, or I'd be burning at sunrise if I gave anything less.
Karen, how about you?
I mean, you can't give this man anything less, because that movie, I remember watching that movie for the first time. It came out on TV, and me and my brother sat and watched it. The cinematic, camera angling and the lighting, the costuming, perfect. Some of the actors that could have changed out. I'm just saying, there's some actors I'm like, not like you. But Gary Oldman has this way of acting to where he's there, but he's also not there. He becomes what he's going to become. Like I was surprised in one of the movies he was in was like one of the Hannibal Lecter movies. Didn't know it was him. Didn't know it was him till the very end. I was like, so Gary Oldman.
He's a bit of a chameleon.
Yes.
Very much so. Yeah.
Very, very much so.
Yeah.
Because of that ability, I tend to forget that there is an actor. I thought it was a person, like, someone. I fell in love with him. I felt sorry for him. I feared him. And all in all, I give him a 5. I mean, to do all that in one movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mark, your turn.
I love this movie. I've seen it so many times. I remember buying when laser discs, high-end laser discs from Criterion were like 120 bucks, $120 for this laser disc. And I brought it home and watched it every night, 5 nights in a row with all the commentaries and everything. Saw it at the theater a bunch of times. I think this movie overall is like a jewelry piece. I know we're going to focus mostly on the person playing Dracula, but just the overall film, the homage that it is to magic acts and 1920s film trickery and everything. He's sitting there shaving himself, and they're slowly pushing the walls in. The technicians are pushing the walls in to make you feel more and more cramped as you're going. It's just a beautiful film. Everything in that movie is thought out. Oldman is fantastic. I've been a fan of his for decades. He's always good. Even if the movie stinks, he's good. I'll say this though, I'm not going to give it a full 5, only for this. I loved Old Man Dracula at the beginning so much that when they got to the young, Studley Dracula, I was sort of like, no, can't we have Old Man Dracula back for a little while? Because he's just so damn creepy with the hair in the middle of his hands. And, if you to go to any one of these rooms, or whatever, you will see me now. I tried that one time. It doesn't work, by the way. But but an amazing performance. He's absolutely great, and so I'm going to give it 4.5 with a half off, just because that first portion was so creepy that I didn't want it to go away. I didn't want him to become handsome, lovey-dovey Dracula, but I still love the whole film. Great movie.
Okay, I definitely give it a 5. Francis Ford Coppola took this book and made it something that almost everybody could fall in love with. And he did that through Gary Oldman's performance. That I don't think there is anything better about that movie than what Gary Oldman did as Dracula. The way he commanded every scene he was in. Even when it was just like a shadow of him, you were entranced by it. You wanted to see what was going to come next. I loved the fact that there was so many facets of that Dracula. You had the old man Dracula, but you had that werebeast Dracula. You had the sexy, suave Dracula who was trying to sweep Mina off her feet. You had all of these different aspects. And then you saw the heartbroken shell of a man that chose to be cursed because of his lost love. And it gives you so much more to think of when it comes to the character that I have to give it a 5. There's just too much depth of character development there for me to give it anything less.
Yeah, it's probably the most developed of almost all Draculas. I don't think there was ever one that had more character written for him. Yeah.
I think this is the deepest dive of a character is I think is his Dracula.
So beautiful. So beautiful.
Right? Right?
Yeah. It's gorgeous.
So we're gonna get a little controversial with this one. Because some people are like, but it's not, his name isn't Dracula. Nosferatu.
Yeah.
It's technically Dracula. They just changed it up.
They robbed him. They ripped him off.
So he couldn't get sued, even though they did, and they lost. The original in 1922 was by Max. How do we feel about Max as Nosferatu / Dracula? Mike, you want to go first on this one?
Sure. Loved it. I first saw him probably high school was the first time I had seen it. And it wasn't even the full version. It was just a clip of the film. And I was mesmerized with it because how strong of a presence with the makeup. And, you almost felt like that was what the actor looked like. And I actually didn't watch the full version probably until I was in my mid-20s because, they had finally found the full version of it to restore. And it was just amazing to be able to see his character. In some ways, I felt like his character was almost closer to the book in some ways. And
it was.
Yeah. And so, and I had read the book in high school. So I loved it. And for me, I'm going to give it like a 4.5.
That's fair. That's fair. Karen, how about you?
Although I like the creepiness of Nosferatu, and even though it's supposed to be based off of Dracula, the book version of Dracula, I don't really necessarily see him as a Dracula because of the fact that for me he was more monster.
Oh, all the way, yes.
Than a man. Because for me, when I look at a Dracula, I want to be able to tell a difference between a man and a monster. Like, you're going to show me one face, show me your man face, and then make that slip away. And I'm like, oh. I want to be able to have some sort of comfort with you before your mask disappears. So to that regard, I'll have to give him a 4, even though he is a Dracula, but also at the same time, not a Dracula.
That's fair.
In my opinion.
That's fair. Mark?
I think this is a super masterpiece. I think that he's just a big rat. It's like a walking rat. Rat Dracula.
Dracula.
Given the year that this movie was made, that's the last face you would want to see looking in your window at night. So think about it. I mean, that is absolutely this hungry rat looking thing. I remember all the years, my dad, I only saw my dad 2 times in his life sit on the couch with us as kids with a pillow held up in front. I mean, he had been in war and everything, but 2 times and the pillow was up like this. Once was when The Exorcist came on HBO, and that was brand new. They actually had to come on with a disclaimer. And then we were watching, and then PBS played Nosferatu, and I knew about it through Monster Magazine, so we watched it, and my dad was like this, looking out from behind the pillow because it was so damn creepy. It was just creepy. It just you didn't and it's a wonderful film. It's beautifully filmed. They got a lot of nice locations in Germany, and I don't know if they go outside of the country, but they filmed in Germany for sure. A lot of those places still exist, including that weird building. I think at the time it was a sugar mill or something. Those houses with the spires that are so tall, where he's sitting there doing this, looking out the window. That stuff still exists, but it's a masterpiece and fires on all levels. And I'm going to give him a 5. He's still Nosferatu, though. It's not Dracula. In the book could get really ugly looking, but he could also hide. This is just straight out, forget it. This is just a straight out ugly vampire. I mean, I'm talking about really ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I give it a 5.
Yeah.
Oogly.
Oh yeah, I would agree. It's incredibly creepy. It's hard for me to think of Nosferatu, even though it was really close to the book. It was hard for me to consider it Dracula because he didn't really. He was just a monster to me. I mean, the film was beautiful. Makeup was beautiful. It was creepy. I saw it when I was like 10, so it creeped me out. But I don't know. I'll give it a 4.5. Beautiful film, but he didn't have the charm of Dracula.
Mhm.
That it's like he couldn't blend. It was just this thing that you saw, and he came after you, and so I give it a 4.5.
Okay.
You know, at some point, if I see this thing coming after me over and over again, I'd be like, you know what? I don't have to
Yeah.
throw these hands. You don't have to catch it.
Even some of his dialogue, like "Your wife has a lovely throat," when he's looking at a picture of her, sort of like, okay, pal. Can I have the picture back? Thanks.
Yeah.
Yep.
And can you leave my house now? Okay.
Yeah. Can you go away?
Yeah, I would give him a 4. Like you guys said, he doesn't have the human aspect that Dracula normally has. It is very much mostly monster. And what human qualities he does have are very awkward and like they're just not the best in the social interaction portion of things. So so it does make it a little awkward, and yes, there is that fear. Like on the monster side of things, he is like 10 out of 10, like creepy, scary. On the horror spectrum, he's scary. We got that. But horror is also about seduction, and he doesn't have that. And I'm like, oh, if you only had that part, like at least whisper speak nothings. Like woo me with some poetry. Yeah, you might look like a rat, but if you can woo me, there might be something.
With that face, really, with that face,
No,
he'd
not
woo you
really.
with some,
No,
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but
not even with a bag over his head.
Not
Come
even
on.
that.
I mean, he could sit there and
I was just
recite
thinking that.
Shakespeare.
Hey, I'm
Yeah,
trying to give him a
me.
shot.
I'd be like, no.
Nosferatu
I'm
pulls up
trying to
at
give
your
him a
house on a
shot.
motorcycle, and your parents go, "No,
I mean,
honey,
the
I don't
guy-
think you should go out with this guy."
The guy who played him, Max, he actually wasn't that bad looking of a dude. Granted, he was no Bela Lugosi, but he wasn't that bad looking of a dude. The makeup made it way worse.
Really creepy. He's a thing of nightmares.
He has a face only a mom could love.
Oh,
Yeah, bless his heart.
bless it. Barb.
But I will say this: the stalking that he does, the skulking in the shadows, that is like on point for Dracula. And like,
Right.
and again, like Bella, these are some like things that they still use today in cinema, and not just horror, like in all genres of cinema, to create suspense and to give illusions to things. And so
They did an homage for it in the Gary Oldman film where his
Mhm.
shadow was turning around strangling Harker,
yeah,
and stuff
Yep.
like that. It was a love letter to Nosferatu,
yeah,
Mhm.
and
Very much
that
so.
is. We'll have to do a whole episode on the Francis Ford Coppola version.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So-
Yeah.
So don't worry, these guys will be back. We'll talk about that episode, and we'll just get into the nitty gritty of that whole thing. But yeah, I would give him a 4. I want to give him like a 4.25, just because of some of the little things that were iconic that carried on to other Draculas, but as a whole, it's really just kind of a 4 for me. So
He does
now,
not look like a good looking dude. He does not.
for that time frame, he was like, objectively, he wasn't a bad looking dude. Not my
Yeah,
type,
definitely.
but most guys from
Wow.
the 20s were not my type. So now we're gonna go on to Mr. Frank, our Broadway Dracula. How do we feel about him? Mark, you want to start us off on that one?
As I fondly christened him one time, Date Night Dracula.
Not wrong. Date Night Dracula is on point.
it was a massive thing, him coming and doing that on Broadway and in the theater. And it was in magazines well before the film came along. And then they had the guy who did Saturday Night Fever directed the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a beautiful film. It was a more romantic Dracula in terms of in terms of his seductive powers. Uh, you could just see him just, basically pushing Jonathan Harker aside, and and so many scenes with Harker just fuming when Dracula shows up and starts dancing with his girlfriend. And it's it works on so many levels. It is a great Dracula movie. I love it. It's it's funny how many of these movies are that far. They really were giving all these movies really damn good reviews. I mean, even the worst so far has been a 4 out of 5. I mean, that's really, Hollywood would be like, yeah. But what we're talking here in this case, for me, his performance is a 5. I'll give the movie a 4.5, because there's a few things that are a little odd to me, but his performance is superb. No, he did not want to ever show fangs. He never showed blood on his mouth or anything like that. But you don't really think about it. You never really think about it till later, till you've actually seen him in an interview saying that. You go, oh yeah, you're right. He never did. We never did see any blood on his mouth or any fangs or anything. He didn't want to do that, and it still worked. It's fantastic. Great performance. Totally great performance by everybody in the film, by the way, too. Yeah.
Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's definitely Date Night Dracula. I think he did a fantastic job for not showing his fangs and blood and everything. And it was a very romantic type of movie. Everybody did a great job. I think the atmosphere was pretty good for what it was. But I still would have liked to see a little bit of blood, more, kind of. But, I give it a 4.5. It's one of my, when I want to have a calmer Dracula to watch.
Dracula's been to therapy or something.
Therapy.
Therapy laden Dracula.
Yeah.
PG Dracula.
Yeah,
PG Dracula. Karen, how about you?
Yeah, actually, that movie was rated R, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird because I don't know why.
Different rating system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's an okay Dracula. I mean, he's not the type of Dracula I'll go for. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, not the Dracula I go for. I mean, great actor. Frank is a great actor. I've seen him in a lot of things. Man's still acting. To this day, he's like 86, still acting.
Yeah.
But he's not my Dracula. He's not my cup of tea. So I'm gonna have to give him a 3.5. I mean, it's not mine. I mean, I watched the movie. Don't give me that. But I'm like, it's my Dracula. No, you're not my Dracula.
Mike, how about you? What are your thoughts on Mr. Frank?
I like Frank a lot. I've loved him as an actor for years, but I think he was too pretty for the role in a lot of ways. I don't think of Dracula as a beautiful man, and Frank Langella was a beautiful man.
Still is.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's a beautiful older man now, but still, as we're getting older in age, it just happens. But anyway, I love the movie. I wish I would have had the chance to see him on Broadway. I really wish I would have. And I enjoyed the story because it's Dracula, but he's not my favorite. He's definitely not. And, for me, that would probably he'd be like 3.5.
Okay. That's fair. When I think of this Dracula, I think of, again, another meme. Hide your wife, hide your kids. Dracula's coming to take your girl. Like, it cracks me up. there is almost like a comedic side to his Dracula if you're thinking about it and that Rico Suave kind of thing that he does. But
Suave.
Rico.
am I wrong? Am I wrong?
You are not
You're
wrong.
not that far off. I do admit that.
But is it Dracula? Not really. I would have to give it. I'll give it a 3.75 because he does have a lot of aspects, and the fact that he can pull a Dracula without fangs and without blood, that does deserve some props.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not a 4 and nowhere near a 5 for me when it comes to him as a Dracula. Here's our next one.
Uh-oh.
Nicolas Cage
Okay.
as Dracula.
I enjoyed the
Renfield.
movie. And I enjoyed the movie. Okay, that movie was hilarious.
And we
And-
are going to be
Ate up the
reviewing
screen.
it. We are going to be reviewing it. So,
Um,
Carrie, go ahead. Give us your
I-
rating.
because it's like it's a comedy, it's a horror comedy. I actually liked his portrayal of a Dracula. You know, I was like, it's Nicolas Cage being Nicolas Cage being a Dracula. I mean, come on, who doesn't love that?
Right?
He has like, the bloodthirst for being a Dracula. He doesn't die. Dear God, he does not die. But he, in a way, he's not a good looking dude. I'm sorry. Some people find him, handsome. I don't find Nicolas Cage handsome. That's just me. It's not my cup of tea. However, his performance as a Dracula in this, it gave me. I had to give it a 4. I had to give it a 4.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Mark, how about you?
I saw the film. I laughed. That's all I can say. We rented. We paid for the movie. Linda and I both laughed. We laughed a lot. We laughed hard. The movie was sick. We loved it.
I love Renfield more.
Which is weird because the guy who played Renfield in this is playing Harker in the new version of Nosferatu that's coming out.
Yeah.
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 But the actual part of Cage is I'm one of those people that does like Cage a lot. I think he does a lot of good movies. People pick on
Yes.
him and stuff like that. But I'd say that it's still I can't take it serious because it is a comedy, and so I can't really sit there and go. I don't know. It's strange. You guys caught me off guard with this question, almost in a way. I did like him in the movie. Don't get me wrong. I thought he was good, but I don't really see it being thrown in this mix. But then I would say I'd give it a 3. But that's still a good 3. I mean, I still enjoyed him in the film, but it was just so out of left field that I just don't know if I can't sit there go, Dracula, Renfield, it kind of kicks my legs out from under me a little bit. Does it make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mike, how about you?
For me, it's interesting. I'm along with everybody else. Nick Cage usually just plays Nick Cage in whatever he does.
Yeah.
And he just happens to have different actor names. Oh, one he's Johnny Blaze, one he's the guy from Valley Girl. Now he's in Moonstruck. And then he's, and I just always felt like no matter what he does, he is just himself. And I kind of felt like that in that version of Dracula he played. And it's going to be very unpopular to say he's one of my least favorite Draculas. And in all truth, I put him almost on par to Leslie Nielsen playing Dracula in, the Mel Brooks movie. So,
Right.
So literally, I don't have much nice to say about it. I liked the movie. It was a nice interpretation of it and modernization of it. But I overall was like, I don't need to watch this again. not like some of the others we've talked about already. And probably for me, I'd give this one like 2.
Okay. All right, Lisa.
Okay. I will have to say, even though he's not my ideal Dracula, and yes, Nicolas Cage does play Nicolas Cage playing Dracula, I actually kind of liked his snarkiness, and his voice alone was great for the role because it's just the way he talks down to you, even if he's not talking down to you. My favorite scene had to be when he got into Renfield's house, and he's like, "Well, how'd you get in?" And he pointed to the welcome mat. I just lost it. That was just funny.
It's like
That is why I do not have a welcome mat.
Oh, well, yeah, there's other reasons why I don't.
Do not have one.
Exactly. But no, I don't think he played what we would interpret as Dracula, but I think for comedic relief, he did a pretty decent job. But I'll give it a 3. I'm not rushing to go watch it again.
I actually will give him a 4. And I know everybody won't agree, and that's okay. It's my rating. It's my rating. So
exactly. You're the host. You can do whatever you want.
Exactly. For me, I think I'm starting to see Nick Cage as an actor really start to become extremely versatile in a lot of the stuff that he's doing. I've recently seen a couple of other things that he's been in, and he doesn't play Nick Cage. And I think that's kind of interesting. But then I think it's kind of funny when he does play off of the fact that he is Nick Cage and he does have a certain way of being. And I think it's interesting when he does take those things that people are like, oh, well, of course it's Nick Cage. Like, this is what you're going to get. But he utilizes that as a benefit, as a good thing. And he just builds on top of it. I think as Dracula in Renfield, he had a lot of the characteristics that we talked about, maybe not as smoothly as we would have liked, which is why he's a 4 and not a 5. But he did have a little bit of suave kind of thing in there. But he was the monster. He did have that bloodthirst. He was cunning. He was able to manipulate things. He did a lot of the things that a Dracula should do. He just did it in a Nick Cage font instead of a Bela Lugosi font or in somebody else's style. And that's why I loved it. So I think it was actually a pretty good one, especially for it being a comedy. Like, this was definitely a horror comedy. Let him have fun with it. Like, please be silly. Please be funny. Let the ridiculousness be there.
Yeah.
And so I think for what it was, I think he did a great job with that character.
He also did a good job in Willy's Wonderland, so y'all need to watch that with Nick Cage in it.
Oh, yeah. It's in my queue.
I also will say Longlegs.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, good.
I'm seeing it.
I will say this with Nick Cage real quick. I am looking forward to him playing Spider-Man Noir.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I am looking forward to that.
Hopefully that redeemed myself to some of the listeners out there.
Hey, Nick Cage is very divisive. You either love him or you hate him. Like, there's very few people where he is like lukewarm kind of deal.
Yeah.
This one is a newer Dracula in the roster from Netflix's Dracula, Clay's Bang. How do we feel about him? Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so I watched it. I did not like his performance. I thought he was rather dry and boring. So I like the girl who played the nun.
Mm-hmm.
She did a great job. But it just didn't engage me. It just didn't feel like I had. There was nothing. It's just kind of boring. And so I give it a 2.
Okay. Mark?
I thought it was crap.
Oh God!
I thought it was. It made me mad when I was watching it. In the first episode, when he's there talking to the nuns through the gate threatening them and everything at the church or wherever it was. It's been, what, 3 years? It was COVID. We were still in the middle of COVID. That's how long it's been. And he starts talking to him, and I look over to Linda and I go, he's talking like he's doing like the way people insult or pick on each other with their cell phones. Like the words coming out of his mouth were so modern, but like technologically modern. And I was like, this is awful. The guy looked good. The production values on the shows were good, but it was just horrible. And I tried to like it. I think I liked the second episode more. Was the second one with them on the ship on the Demeter?
Yeah,
That one I liked a little better. And then the third one, when they ripped off the ending of the Christopher Lee Dracula film with the lady playing, she was Van Helsing, right? She was Van Helsing. She did a real good job. I liked her. I agree with Lisa on that. She did a real good job. But the movie itself and that Dracula, I think the guy, if you had told him, hey, look, we just took everybody out back and killed them who wrote this thing, and we've got fresh writers, and just wait a minute and we'll give you a real Dracula script, I think he would have been fantastic. He looked good. But all the crap that came out of his mouth killed it. Completely killed it. I give it a 1.
Okay. Mike?
I'll tell you how you really feel, Mark.
I thought it was great.
It's interesting because he was beautiful to look at. But I did not like how his speech was, how he acted. Like Mark said, it was too modern. And it was just like, it was supposed to originally be a period piece at the beginning of it, and not him, like, not a time traveler from today sent back or whatever. And I think that pulled me out from the story about him as a character, and where they went with it, I thought was awful. And like Mark, I liked the second episode when they were on the boat. Was fantastic. I thought that was very, very well done. And I'll be nice. I'll give it a 2.5. But it wasn't good. I wouldn't recommend it. And this is another one I won't watch again.
That's fair. So for me, I think there was a lot of foundation that was really good. Like, I actually kind of dug the plot a little bit, like the overarching plot where you have like almost like this reincarnation of Van Helsing that constantly interacts with Dracula. I thought that was kind of cool, actually. But I do think the writing was a little lackluster, especially when it came to dialogue. I think there was, I agree, like the speech, and not just for Dracula, but for a lot of the characters, was a little too modern in the way that they were speaking. Like the nun Van Helsing in the first episode, she's talking like all these psychological terms that wouldn't have really been there in that time frame. So it was like, that's not quite right. But I think he was a little 2D for me. He didn't have that 3D pop. It was just a little flat. It was missing something, and I can't put my finger on it. Part of it I want to say is like the passion, because even like in the scenes when he's like raging at people, there doesn't seem to be any fire behind it. But he does have that suave, I'm better than everybody else in the room kind of attitude that kind of worked in certain scenes, but it didn't translate throughout the entire thing. But I do agree. I think the second episode, the middle episode, I think was probably the best. I think him as a Dracula was better in that than it was in the first or the third. I think if he had been given a better script, he could have been a better Dracula. So I'm going to give him a 3, just because I think there was potential, and you can't fault somebody for somebody else not giving you the correct material to use and build off of. But he was on the lackluster side. So, last but not least, in our top 8 of discussion is Mr. Al Lewis, who plays Sam Dracula in The Munsters.
Ah,
You want to start this one off? You want to start this one off, Karen?
I love Grandpa. He was like my favorite of the whole Monster series. Because he reminds me of my grandpa. So, how he's like so caring and nurturing and stuff like that. Grandpa. So I can never disparage Grandpa. I have to give him a 4.5.
Fair. Mike, how about you?
Love Grandpa. It's funny because you don't know where Al Lewis started and Dracula, Grandpa ended. I actually was fortunate enough to meet Al Lewis in New York, and he was awesome. He used to own a restaurant in Manhattan, in Greenwich Village, actually, and he actually used to stand outside and try to get people to come into his restaurant and everything. And he used to then sit in the restaurant smoking a cigar and just talking to anybody. We talked to him for like 45 minutes, and he was one of the most nicest gentlemen you've ever met and everything. But he was crotchety, and he was what you saw, with a really bad sense of humor, and and it was just great. And he will always have a place in my heart. And it was just, as a little kid, he was Grandpa. And it's like, why isn't my grandpa like this? Type thing, blowing up things and wearing a cape and everything. It was just always awesome. And the chemistry he had, of course, with Herman was even better, type thing. So definitely I give him a 4 very easily.
Rock on. Lisa?
Oh, wow. How can you not love Grandpa Munster? Oh, my gosh. I loved him ever since I started watching it when I was a kid. Yeah, I liked all the blowing up stuff. But, no, I give him a 4.5. I love him to pieces.
He's pretty cool. Mark, how about you?
I did not see him on TV. I saw him. We were living in Germany at the time at the airbase, Ramstein Air Base, and we saw Monsters Go Home. So the first time I saw him, he was in color, and that was where they had that super cool. I saw it on the big screen with the Dracula Roadster and everything like that. That's part of that whole thing where monster movie fandom had gotten so big starting in the late 50s with the release of Universal Monsters on television. It started this new wave, this new love of monster movies, and then Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine and da-da-da-da-da. And then it got to the stuff like the Addams Family and the Munsters and the gruesomes on the Flintstones. That's another thing I love. But the Munsters is such a favorite of mine. And so, yeah, I really love the character. I think he was perfectly cast. I mean, he basically invented his own character. I mean, if you said, I didn't even know until tonight that he was supposed to be Dracula. You guys are telling me something new that I didn't even know. I just figured, well, he's just an old vampire grandpa living downstairs. But he had a lab, and he would do experiments with Herman, and they'd go off and do stuff together that Lily would get mad about and everything. And he was a lot of fun. So I'm going to give him a solid 4.
Rock on.
Yeah.
We got everybody, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
For you.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure everybody else got their chance. Al Lewis as Sam Dracula, Grandpa, it's priceless. It's iconic, especially for TV. I think he hits all the points. He's charming and funny, but he is a vampire. He does his vampire things, and the way he takes, the family and does things with them, and the the connection he has with them all. I think he's a fantastic Dracula. He's a fun one, and I think he's um, a great first interaction with Dracula for the youths in the world.
Youth.
I mean, yeah, I love. I still watch the monsters every once in a while because I have a channel that lets me watch like old school shows. I was always been wondering, like, how did they get a werewolf child out of a vampire woman and Frankenstein man?
Don't overthink it. That's what I'd say. Just don't overthink it. I don't know.
You got to think about like the Addams family. How is cousin It related to them?
Yeah.
Like,
I'll tell you what, I was watching something the other day on the Munsters that kind of shocked me that they said it. Herman goes out to go on the baseball team or whatever, and these guys are going, man, he is ugly. And the one guy goes, yeah, what do you think? He just came back from Vietnam? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe that.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Back then
but you know what?
Back then it was just a laugh, but nowadays it's like, oh.
But I mean, you have to think about it. That was something that happened then that you can't expect it to be on the 2024 level of political correctness.
Oh yeah, and this was this was like 65, 66. So even then it was just a skirmish going on. It hadn't even become full blown war for us. But
not
still,
at all.
just the fact that they said it, I was kind of like, what? What did they just say?
Right?
Holy mackerel.
All right, so now it is time for our rapid fire. So I'm gonna give you guys a name. You tell me how many skulls, and that's gonna kind of be about it. All right. Okay. First up is Louis Jordan, Count Dracula from 1977. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. And the reason I want to go first, I'm going to give a little bit of history. This came on PBS, and they showed it the first night. I was watching it the first night it came on around Halloween, and it actually had the baby inside the bag on television. And when they played it again the next Halloween, the next year, they made them cut that scene, which, where you realize Dracula's gonna, but at that time that was just considered too heinous to show on television. They got past it the first time. I think it's an excellent Dracula.
Consuming a baby, consuming a baby is a little.
I remember being in the Gary Oldman at the theater, and he holds up the baby, and man, there were people in the theater that got really mad. I mean, it was like, you went to a taboo. But this one, I would have put this one up in this list that we had already. I consider this to be a masterpiece. I think Louis Jordan is his own Dracula. He's very slick. He was very good casting as Dracula, and yet it's on videotape and everything. Still a very, very good Dracula movie.
Okay.
I'll give it a 4.5, something like that, somewhere in there.
All right, Mike, how about yourself?
I've only seen it once, so when I saw it, loved it. And I thought he was very well for a more modern type. He looked like he was one of the Beatles in parts of it. But, it was fun. I give it a 4. 4?
All right. Lisa? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. It was good for what it was, and I definitely give it a 4.5.
All right. Karen?
I mean, he's a suave vampire. I mean, very handsome. So I'll give him a 4. I mean, very handsome vampire.
That's fair. I would definitely give it a 4. I think it was a very classic Dracula. The best? No, but for what it was, it was actually really good. Yeah. Really good.
Interesting.
So I'll give it a 4. All right. Nosferatu, 1979. Played by Mr. Klaus. What are our thoughts? And let's just give quick skulls.
I love it. I give it 4.5 easily, maybe even a 5. It's different from its predecessor, but but he plays a more sickly vampire. But the movie is beautiful, like a poem to me. So yeah, I give it a 4.5.
All right, Karen.
Yeah, I remember this one. I would give it a 4.
Number 4. All right. Mr. Mike.
I liked it, and I'll do 3.5.
3.5.
Hmm.
All righty. What are your thoughts on the Nosferatu 1979 Klaus? Mr. Klaus.
I love Klaus Kinski, so I have to give it a 4.5.
Alrighty. I would have to say about the same, 3.5. He wasn't what I was thinking when it comes to Dracula, but I think the story and everything that they did was pretty on point. So our next Dracula, Adam Sandler in Hotel Transylvania.
Oh, loved him.
Yeah.
I've never once said blah, blah, blah.
So, Mr. Mike, since you spoke first, how many skulls?
4.5 for Adam Sandler.
4.5. All right. Lisa,
He was
how about
adorable.
4.5. I loved it.
Mark?
Never saw it.
Okay.
Didn't know it existed.
Well,
So
now
I
you do,
cannot-
and now you got to go see it.
I will. I promise. Homework. I didn't realize I was going to get homework.
And that's not even part. And that's not even part of the electric chair.
All right.
Right?
Blah 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 blah.
Karen, how about you?
I mean, I love the movie so much, like, because my nieces got me into it. Like, I watched it the first time, so I'm gonna have to give it a 5 because my nieces loved it. They made me watch it over and over and over, and it's a cute little movie for kids.
Yeah.
William was like, "Dad, you've got to watch this." And it's like, really? And I was like, actually like, okay, the first 2 were actually really cute.
Yeah.
I actually really do enjoy him as Dracula. He did a really good job. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 only because like they're just not movies I would rewatch over and over and over again. Like if my niece wants to watch them, I'll watch them with her, but I'm not gonna go out of my own way to go watch them, if that makes sense.
Blah blah blah.
Blah, 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 blah.
All right. Now it is time for the Monster Squad. Mr. Duncan, how do we feel about him as Dracula? Okay, Mark?
I really liked that little movie, or mid-sized movie, I guess you'd call it. When I saw who was playing Dracula, I'm like, this is a guy I see on TV and everything. Just regular supporting roles and all that kind of stuff. And then I gotta admit, for a guy who really, that's the way I viewed him, I thought he was pretty good. I thought he did a fine job. So I'm going to give it, I'll give him some 3.5 for maybe even a 4 for surprising, beating my expectations. But I thought he was okay. He was fine, except for the one line that he had that most people feel nowadays is kind of unforgivable. What he said to the little girl, I thought that was a bit too much.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. Karen,
not his fault. The director's fault.
3.5.
3.5. All right, Lisa.
I get a 3.5. He's a little too dry for me.
Okay, Mike.
3.
I would agree. I'd give him a 3. It's not bad, but he's not the best. He's just pretty standard run of the mill. All right. How about Luke Evans and Dracula Untold?
I give it a 4.
Mike? 4. Mike?
Never saw it.
Okay. Lisa?
I give it a 4.5. I thought he did a great job.
Okay. Mark?
Luke Evans is Dracula.
Yeah.
Is he the guy from the Kevin Costner TV show? No, it's not the same guy.
He's the guy who played Gaston in the live action Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, I haven't seen that one either. I haven't seen the film.
Okay. I would actually give him like a 4.5. There's a lot of Gary Oldman vibes on his performance and even just the way that they tell the story. But I like the duality of him fighting whether or not he becomes Dracula. Dario Argento's Dracula.
Can we
Oh
not?
my God.
Crap. Is there?
Ugh.
Oh,
Can we
Can
not?
we go into
Can we
into
not?
negative on this
This
one?
is going to be fast
Yeah.
crap.
right.
I feel sorry for that actor. He's such a good actor in other films.
I
God, what a
know.
horrible movie.
It was awful.
Frickin' praying mantis Dracula.
Oh, I know, right?
Right?
Like, what the hell is this?
I think Grandpa had something put in his meds or something.
Jeez.
All right.
Can we not?
Let's give numbers.
Can,
Karen,
Zero.
can I give a
Yeah.
zero?
Zero.
Mike?
Yeah, none.
Big ass zero.
All right, Lisa.
-2 squared. I'm sorry. It was
Thank
that
you.
bad.
That was
And I love Dario Argento, but this was just horrifying. And not in a
And
good
he
way.
was such a like Thomas is such a good actor though.
Mhm.
And that
he is. He's a very good actor, and he got screwed over. Can I say screwed over on this
Yeah.
show? I can't
Oh
remember.
yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
Yeah.
Say whatever you want to say.
fuck yeah.
Rude over on it.
I'm going to give him a 1 only because I think based on what he was given, he did a pretty decent job himself. I'm not saying the rest of the movie was good. I'm not saying what he was given was good. I'm just saying that as an actor, he did what he could with what he was given. And I
Okay.
respect it. And so that's why he gets a 1 instead of a 0.
Or negative.
All right. We have Richard from Van Helsing. Yeah.
I'll go with it. That's another piece of crap. Complete crap. The movie's crap. I left the theater with my fists clenched because I thought we were going to get the Universal monsters after seeing the first Mummy movie and then seeing the Gods and Monsters movie, which I absolutely love. And then you go to see this, and it's just the Frankenstein monster stuffing his brains back in his head and everything. That's a good actor. I actually like that actor. I think he's good. I think he could have been a very good Dracula, but the movie is just it's like you're stuck in an airlock on a spaceship and somebody farts. I mean, you just can't get away from it. You just can't. It's like, and everybody left the theater mad. So I don't know what his performance was. I saw it the weekend it opened up, and then I never who's making that weird noise? But I would give it a he's a good actor. I'm going to give it a 2. The movie I give a 0.
Fair.
Sorry.
Karen?
I mean, he is a good actor. I just have to give it a 1. I mean, I know you work with what you're given, but
Yeah. No, that's fair. Mike?
1.
And Lisa?
1. Definitely 1. Yeah.
All right. Now, last but not least in our rapid fire is going to be another divisive one. I know it's divisive. Gerard Butler in Dracula 2000.
I never saw it. I didn't see it.
Okay, that's fair.
I was really drunk when I saw it.
so you didn't. So he didn't see it either.
The first time I saw it, I was too. So you're good. But Mike, do you have a rating?
1.
1. Lisa?
3.
3. Okay.
Yeah. I think he did a
Karen?
pretty decent job.
so yeah, I give it a 1.5. I'm sorry. I tried to watch it again. I did. I really did. But my sister was like, no, we both watched this already. We can't do it.
Is that the one with the girl? Is Jerry Ryan in that one?
Vitamin C?
No, the girl who played on Star Trek Voyager. The one who played
7 of 9.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think I saw like a brief minute.
It has everybody in it.
Mhm.
Like honestly, it's actually a really like star-studded cast for this film.
Everybody's in it, so it's like Abraham Lincoln in it.
Oh, well, you have Nathan Fallon.
Yeah. The one guy from Trainspotting.
Oh, I forgot what his name is.
Johnny.
Oh, the guy yeah, okay, I know you're talking about. Yeah, it just sounds like it's got. I mean, I didn't realize it was Gerard Butler. Was he thinner then? Because he's kind of put on weight. Was he a
Yeah,
heavy set
he was
Dracula?
he
He was
was a
thinner.
little thinner.
He was thin.
Yeah, he was
Okay, yeah,
thinner.
yeah. You gotta be at least moderate or thin to be Dracula.
Mhm.
Yeah, he was on the thinner side. Johnny Lee Miller, that's his name.
That's a good actor too.
You had
Yeah.
Christopher
Yeah.
Palmer play Van Helsing. You
Mhm.
had Jennifer Esposito. You had Omar Epps, Sean Patrick Thomas. You
Uh-huh.
actually had Danny Masterson.
Wow, some decent people. Who directed the film?
You had Patrick Lessler.
Yes, I don't know
Lessler.
that name.
Mhm.
So it sounds like nobody liked the film, though.
Okay.
Ultimately,
I love the film.
Oh,
I love the film. I guess
Who's
it's a
the
guilty
one?
pleasure.
yeah.
When I went to New Orleans, because the movie is based in it, and my cousin's a jazz musician there, I was like,
Right.
dude, you have to take me to some of the places where they shot this film because I gotta go see it. And like they actually had like the Virgin Music Store that was in the film. And he's like, oh
Right.
yeah, it's no longer there, but it was in that building, and so we went by it. It was cool. I enjoyed the film.
That's cool.
Uh,
We all have guilty
I
pleasures, films that we love that others don't. So don't.
and I will say this. I kind of liked the twist on Dracula's origins in it. Which, if you haven't seen it, it is that he is actually Judas Iscariot.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. I thought
Okay.
it was a cool twist. Don't see the sequels because the sequels are garbage. I will tell you that right here, right now, because I watched both of
Okay.
them and really wish I
Agreed.
had it.
Wow. Okay. All right. I might check the first one out then.
But I enjoyed the first one. If you do take it as like there is a little bit of satire to it, it's a little bit better to digest than thinking it's like a straight up like Dracula horror. And don't try to compare it to Bella. Don't try to compare it to the greats. Like, just don't. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy it for what it is. And
thought you were going to start crying for a minute. Just don't.
Just don't.
let me love my movie.
You get to love your movie. You love your movie. If you love it, you love it.
I do.
Nobody gets
You
to tell you
movie
different.
lover, you.
So now the long wait is over for you, Mark. We all get to tell who our favorite Dracula is. So, Karen, who's your favorite Dracula? So Mark can find out because he's really been wanting to know.
Oh, Gary Oldman. Oh my God. Like if he came downstairs as creepy old Dracula, I'll still go for him. I mean
I will admit, can I interject here on Karen's discussions tonight? She is sort of when you bring up the different Draculas, it's sort of like she's on a dating app. and she's sort of like,
honestly,
this guy Gary Oldman, he looks cute. You know,
to be perfectly honest,
he's a little too. He's not my type.
To be perfectly honest, these Draculas are better options than what are on the dating websites and apps. So
yeah, they are.
Yes, I agree.
Wow.
Yes.
So there are a few Draculas I would swipe right on.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, it's just I grew up with watching Gary Oldman's Dracula. Like it's usually playing somewhere in the house. So yeah, I mean
yeah, totally makes sense.
My brother had it on like VHS.
Mike, how about you?
It has to be for me, Bella, all the way.
That's fair.
You know, he was my first, and once you have your first, you can't go back.
No, nobody forgets their first love.
No.
Lisa?
I have to say Gary Oldman. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just love the versatility and the way he just the performance was just, I got so absorbed in it that, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Mark, how about you? Who's your favorite?
Well, I love the fact that we had such a good big list at first. I love pretty much all those guys that we brought up. They're all great. It's one of those weird instances where you go, wow, which one really is the best? So I have to go with Ground Zero, and I have to go with Bella just because he was first, and other people are always under the shadow. Even Gary Oldman said, "I got to deal with Bella." Christopher Lee,
Yeah.
I got to deal with Bella. Frank Langella, and they all had to think about it. I love all those guys. I think they're all excellent.
Hmm.
Bella is the Mona Lisa of the Draculas. It's this thing where you go,
He's the
this
antithesis.
is this
Yeah.
is where it started, and it might not have ever happened if it hadn't have been for that film.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I'll give it to
True.
him and his usual diction and everything else, and I love it. But I love all the other guys too that we discussed. So a lot of
Thank
fun.
goodness we didn't bring up another one. Yay.
I could keep going.
Well,
could-
the one
I
that
mean,
the one we
I-
were having debate with was Blade Trinity 3, that Dracula.
Yeah,
And I was like,
we were
No.
debating on that one.
What about
Yeah.
Dracula 1957? What about him? We
Yeah,
left him out.
Yeah.
He was pretty good. That guy was
I
good.
had when I curated this final list for everybody.
Mhm.
I will say this: we had over 30 guys on the list,
Yeah.
and I'm like, we have almost half of the men who've played Dracula on this list. We do not have time on our podcast to go over every single one.
No,
So we gotta go. We gotta go with the ones that are obvious. Like, yes, we have to talk about these guys. So Bella, Lee, Ullman.
Did you guys have on your list? Did you have Dracula Istanbul? Did you
Yes.
have him?
Mhm.
Oh, you did.
Yeah,
I mean, some of that stuff's very interesting, but that's running down rabbit holes.
yeah,
That's
and
not.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
And then for the fast portion, I was like, let's do some divisive ones, some ones that people are gonna be like, you did not pick that one to go on there. Like, I wanted there to be some fun with it.
Sure.
But my favorite Dracula, I'm gonna say, is Oldman. I'm gonna agree with my ladies here. As much as I love Bella, and he's a very, very, very close second, Gary he hits the nail on the head, and it's a movie that I watch over and over and over and over again. So I have to give it to Gary on that one.
I'll tell you
But
what, Francis Ford Coppola would love to have listened to this tonight. I'll tell you that
Yeah.
because he'd be very
Right?
happy right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Gary Oldman won. Number wise, we picked Bella was the highest numerically, but I think love wise, I think Gary Oldman won.
Yeah.
I think
He could come down as old creepy man Dracula. And I'd be like, look,
There are moments when I have to go, do I need to talk to my therapist about this? I feel like there might be a reason to. But before we kind of start wrapping things up, I do want to ask one kind of question, because it's obvious we all really do love the character itself, Dracula. What do we actually want to see for him as a character going on in the future? Because there are going to be twists and turns in the adaptation of the character. So what would we like to see? Karen, do you want to start us off on that?
I mean, if you're gonna modernize him, I would actually like to see a female version of a Dracula. See if a woman can actually pull off being, what you think of Dracula is. I would like to see a woman pull it off.
That's cool. That'd be cool. Mark?
Well, we're in a different world now. We don't have to deal with ABC, NBC, and CBS being the only way to watch television, and even HBO. You've got streaming. We watch so many television shows through streaming now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'd like
Yeah.
to see them actually do a very large, go back to the origin of Dracula back during the Vlad era and arc it all the way up until his death. If they can get away with it, if the show stays good, get really good writers and do something that goes with him through what was it, 500 years ago, 600 years ago, whatever, and go all the way up to his death in the novel. But let's see all the different things that happen with him. Let's see all the different people he interacts with. They could have a field day. Good writers could have a field day with it. I'm not talking about that. What's that guy's name? Bang Galveston. What was the guy's name that we were talking about? That the people that did Doctor Who. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Klaus Bangson, or I forget his name.
Clay's Bang.
Yeah, Clay's Bang. Yeah, I mean it's not like that. I think you could. There are writers out there that are so good at doing story arcs and stuff now that you could just follow Dracula for years and make a good television series out of it that's historical. On a Game of Thrones sort of a way or something. But I think that's the only thing I can think of right off the top of my head. To me, Dracula updated to me is sort of like, I mean, I love the hippie stuff of Dracula AD 1972, but that's like jamming two things together, hippies and vampires and stuff like that. But I think that I don't even think the theater is going to be the thing. I think it's going to be something on television. I think it's going to be something on streaming.
Okay. Lisa?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Mark. It'd probably have to be something on streaming. I'd like to see, in a non-comedic way, how he deals with the modern world and the gadgets, and try not to get tracked and everything, but still stay eloquent and try to keep the way he runs things.
Stephen Moffat did that, though, in his version.
Something like that. I'd like to see something more like that.
Okay. Mike, how about you?
I would love to see something interesting. I would love to see Dracula on TV, but in individual stories, like each episode being a different version by a different take, a different director, different writer, and even put it into animation, maybe even with a different art style, kind of like what Star Wars has done with the Jedi's stuff and the Empire stuff. But each would be a different style take on the Dracula mythos. I think would be truly amazing.
It's kind of like what they did with there's an anime, it's like called The Nine Levels of Hell or something like that.
Exactly.
It's like Dante's Inferno, but each, there's like different artists and storytellers for each level.
Yeah. I honestly just would love to see a more raw version of the character. I feel like too many times we get something that is quite polished, and I want to see something a little raw. I want to see something that's a little more emotion driving. And we get peaks of it from a lot of different ones, but I would love to get a Dracula that just cuts loose, but still doesn't lose that eloquence that Dracula is known for having.
The only person I have to say they cannot direct it, Rob Zombie.
Please no.
Oh, please no.
Fair. I'm surprised it took us that long just to mention that name. So we're going to get into some final thoughts, but I want these final thoughts to be, because we've all said this word in talking about this character, is iconic. And I know that we all believe that Dracula is. Let's have our final thoughts kind of be based on that, like Dracula and its iconicness. Mark, you want to start off?
Well, it's interesting that we brought up people that, no pun intended, put their stake in their own iconicness. I mean, you look at the Oldman Dracula, it's not the same as the Langella Dracula. It's not the same as the Christopher Lee Dracula. It's not the same as the Lugosi Dracula, but they're all iconic now. All of that has been done, and then it's imitated. it's been, almost all those versions have been imitated now. So, it just proves that there's life in the old dead guy after all. I mean, it's somebody's going to come along with something else that other people are going to go fall in love with and put it in that canon. But it is neat the way that about every so many years, about every so many decades, somebody else nails it. The 30s, the 50s, the 70s, the 90s, who's going to be next? Somebody else will put something else on it, but they all have quality to them. That's what I love about them.
I
Yeah.
can't wait to see Quentin Tarantino do a version of Dracula.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. All right, Mike, your turn.
Final Thoughts is Dracula is going to be part of culture going forward. It's just amazing, seeing what people come up with and original ideas. And they've tried many things. Some stick, some don't. And it's just, I'm going to be looking forward to seeing what comes up and hope it doesn't suck.
That's fair. That is fair. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, it just amazes me how just the whole it being so iconic and it's continued through the years. And I'm like Mike. I look forward to seeing what we're going to come up with. It's never dull. Even the bad ones, as bad as they are, it's still you can't stop watching it because it's Dracula. The name itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Karen?
Okay, so Dracula, yeah, we keep harping on the word iconic, because it is an iconic character. Started off as a book, then became, mainstream through movies, and like it will, Dracula will always evolve and continue to evolve into he will always be the same, and yet it will be an evolution to something different. Because everyone puts their own takes on Dracula. I would love to see, more Dracula movies. I would have loved for them to continue on with Luke Evans' version of, Dracula Untold. They actually had a part 2 slated, but the Dark Universe or whatever, Dark Studios,
Dark
Yeah.
that was supposed
Dark
to
Universe. Yeah.
folded because I think it was they had Dracula, and then they had the Mummy, and then it kind of folded after that. Even if they
Because the
were
Mummy
to
didn't have Brendan Fraser in it.
Well, there was the
Just
one
saying.
the one that sank it was the Tom Cruise Mummy.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It didn't
And
have
they even
Brendan
had-
Fraser in it.
They even had Mr. Hyde in there already, lined up with
Yeah.
it, but no, that thing tanked, and it deserved
Yeah.
to tank.
I mean, this goes the same thing as saying there are certain actors that's supposed to play certain roles, and he was not that. But Luke Evans did a pretty good job as being Dracula, and then you see like the different versions of vampires that was in that movie, the older vampire. But yeah, I would like to see him, continue the whole because he had the suave, he had the brutality, he had that look of a Dracula, a look of a prince, a look of a general, a look of somebody fighting for the people.
Yeah.
You know,
He was Vlad the Impaler
yes.
before he became the monster Dracula. So yeah.
I gotta watch this now. I haven't seen it.
I actually think it's pretty decent.
My girlfriend loves it. She says, "I don't understand why you don't like this movie." I said, "Well, maybe because I haven't seen it because it looks like, stud Dracula, and I'm not really in the mood for that." But
I mean,
I guess
it's more period piece. It's more period piece. So
right.
I say give it a shot. I think you might actually really like it.
Cool.
I mean, yeah, he does look like a stud, but the thing is, he's a warrior. So
he really is a stud.
He first started off as a warrior, so you're kind of like, and in a way, he kind of looks like Vlad, and the facial wise, if you give him like the bigger mustache, he kind of will resemble Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah, I think even in the book, Dracula is iconic. It is a character that ignites something in everyone, whether it be fear, whether it be protectiveness, whether it be, whatever.
Jealousy
It
would be a good one too.
yeah, jealousy. It always enacts something. And so I think that's what makes it such an amazing thing, is that as you continue on and you see all these different Draculas, you can see how they all stem from that one thing that just pulls so much from you when you
Right.
watch them over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But now, Mark, it's time for the electric chair.
No,
Yes.
okay.
Better you than me, buddy.
Thanks,
They
Mike. Words of comfort.
I mean, Mike has survived the electric chair. He's a survivor of it, and
Could
he even
survive
did the
anything.
Jaws edition. So,
Oh my
like,
gosh. Okay.
I think you're gonna be good. I think you're gonna be good. First question: who is your favorite horror villain?
Ooh, my favorite horror villain?
Yeah.
That's a horrible question. I'm filled with horror just thinking about it.
And ex-wives
Jeez.
don't count, so it's okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of horror villain. Oh, see, I'm going to think about it 3 days from driving down the road and crash the car, because then I'll
Do
really
that.
have the answer. I mean, we're talking about Dracula, so that's an easy one, but I'm sure there's something more that I don't know. I got Dracula. I guess for
Dracula.
right now.
Okay.
Dracula
That's
for
okay. That is okay.
boring.
We're going to do Kiss, Mary, Kill, Dracula edition.
Okay.
So we're gonna do Bela Lugosi's Dracula, Christopher Lee's Dracula, and Gary Oldman's Dracula. Kiss, Mary, Kill.
We have to kiss each other? What?
No, you.
You.
You gotta pick one that you want to kiss, one you want to kill, and one you want to marry.
Okay, when you want to kiss,
Mm-hmm.
hmm
One you want to kill,
Kill.
when you want to kill, and
and
one you
one
want
you
to
want to
marry.
marry.
Okay, yeah, this is actually pretty easy. Okay, so I want a kiss. Well, who are the three Draculas?
Bella, Lee,
Bella.
and Oldman.
Okay, I'd kiss Oldman just because I think he's one of the greatest actors in the history of the world. So I'll kiss
Okay.
him. This is not a sexual thing or anything, but I will
Nope.
kiss him firmly on the mouth, maybe a little tongue. I'll kill Christopher Lee because he needs a stake pounded in his chest, that ferocious lion him. And I'd marry Bella because I would like to be with Bella and have Bella in my life forever. So yeah, that's it.
Fair. And then the last question is, what two fictional characters from any genre, so it doesn't have to necessarily be horror, would you want with you to survive a horror movie?
Jeez. Fictional characters.
Fictional characters. Yep.
Okay, fictional characters that would survive with me through what? Through
Who
a
would help
zombie?
you survive a horror movie?
Well, James Bond would be one of them. And
Which is based off of Christopher Lee, by the way.
yeah. Oh, well, in a way, yeah. I mean, he really had a lot of he knew like eight languages or something. He was a military expert.
Which James Bond? Because you have the
Uh,
Sean Connery James Bond. You have
well, the
Roger
book,
Moore.
we're probably talking about the actual novel would be
Okay.
more his
Okay.
thing. The alcoholic little skinny little James Bond. Let's see. Okay, so James Bond was one of them, and fictional character to survive. Well, Doc Savage. That then I'd certainly live. That's an
There you
easy
go.
one. There you go. Thank you.
There you go. And guess what, Mark? You survived the electric chair. Yay!
So what would happen if I was wrong? Would I get shocked?
To be perfectly honest, nobody is not survived. So, like,
we don't
Okay.
want to get
we don't
sued.
know.
No.
Exactly. We make it sound scary. It's actually not that scary.
It wasn't scary. It was scary because I couldn't think, and that's hard for me. So,
But hey, you
So, that was
survived.
very
So wee!
Yay!
Okay. I did survive.
You did. All right, listeners, come on. get into our comment sections and tell us who you think is the best Dracula. Who is your favorite Dracula? You can tell us on our social media, and we can continue this conversation. We are on Instagram, we are on TikTok, X, Threads, and we've already mentioned it earlier, but our Facebook group. Get on in there. We are having so much fun in there. You can also subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Apple, Google, Spotify, and we are on YouTube. But you can also follow all of us individually if you thought our takes were like so much better than everybody else's. So, Mark, where can they find you at?
www.maddoxplanet.com. It's you can email me through it too and everything, and I got a little store there. So that's where I'm at.
Rock on, rock on. Mike, where can they find you?
Of course, always find me as part of the ESO network. You can find me on Earth Station Who, talking all things Doctor Who, of course. But of course, I also have a new podcast called Tales from Hollywoodland, where I am the producer and the announcer for the show. And I pop in every once in a while to just put my 2 cents in and, stop the old guys from, just blabbing on for hours and hours and hours and hours. It's always fun, though. And it's a great, great time. So check it out, Tales from Hollywoodland.
Rock on. Lisa, where can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. You can find me on, that's pretty much where you can find me.
All right. Karen, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, Discord. You can find me on TikTok, Reddit. Yeah.
All right. And I'm Shannon. You can find me at Spilled Tea Wine Media Mind on all the things. And before we go, we want to thank you, the listener, for joining us. We really do appreciate you and your support. Thank you for sharing our podcast around and listening. It really does mean a whole lot to us. Stay spooky, our lovely little ghouls.
And this has been the Spooky and Kooky Podcast of Earth Station Boo.